Okay, what I am going to show is actually three different methods that we use in our classroom to help introduce students to the topic of multiplying a fraction using manipulatives. So I'm going to start with two ways. We always begin with multiplying a fraction times a whole number. Seems to be easiest for students to wrap their heads around. So that's what I'm going to start with. So two methods we use for that, and then one final visual for multiplying a fraction times a fraction. So we're going to start with our first problem here, which is 3/4 times 16. So whenever we start our multiplication unit for fractions, we always stress the word of. We tell our students over and over again that when we are multiplying, we are finding 3/4 of a larger group of 16. So an easy way for kids to picture this is I want 1/2 of a pan of brownies. So I'm taking that whole pan of brownies and I'm taking 1/2 of it. So actually, when we multiply it by a fraction, our whole number will be shrinking. Just like if you have one pan of brownies and you want half of it, you're not going to have more than the pan of brownies. You're going to have less than that full pan of brownies. So we're going to start with a dot array to solve this. So our whole number is 16. So that means I am going to be using 16 counters. But I'm not just going to randomly lay these counters out. I'm going to use my fraction to help me. So my fraction is telling me to make my counters in groups of 4. That's my denominator. That's how many groups I have. So I am going to lay out 4 counters for my 4 groups. My problem is telling me that I have 16 holes, or in this case, I have 16 counters. So right now I only have 4 counters. So I'm going to keep adding counters until I get to 16. And I'm keeping them in my 4 groups because that's what my denominator of my fraction is showing us. I have 4 groups. So now I'm at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Okay, so now what I have done so far is I have taken 16 counters and I have split them into 4 groups because my denominator is telling me how many groups I'm making. But I want 3/4 of 16. So I don't want all 4 groups, I only want 3 of those groups. So I am going to take one group of 16, that's 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. I have 3 out of 4 groups of my 16 counters. So how many counters is that? Well, we just count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 3/4 of 16 is equal to 12. Another way we can show this is by actually making a fraction itself. So my next problem is 2/5 of 4. So I am taking 4 and I want to split that into 2/5. Now our dot array is not going to work for this problem. So I'm going to start by just making my fifths fraction. So I have a fraction bar and I'm dividing it into 5 sections because my denominator is 5. Now it tells me that I have 2/5. So I'm going to color 2 parts of my bar. So right now I'm showing a fraction of 2/5 in a fraction strip. I am then going to duplicate this 4 times. So I have 1 2/5, 2 2/5, 3, 4. So I have taken my fraction 2/5 and I have replicated it 4 times. This is connecting that idea that multiplication is just repeated addition. I am taking 2/5 and I am repeating it 4 times. So 2/5, 2/5, 2/5, 2/5. Now is when we count. So now I'm going to count how many do I have. I have 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5, 5/5, 6/5, 7/5, 8/5. So right now, 2/5 of 4 is 8/5. Now that's an improper fraction, so we could fix that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 makes one whole. And then I have 1, 2, 3 fifths remaining. So I could say my final answer is 1 whole and 3/5. So that covers multiplying by a whole number. Those are two methods that we use. The last thing I wanted to show was multiplying by a fraction times another fraction. So for this one, we use a coloring model. So my problem I made is 3/4 times 2/3, or 3/4 of 2/3. So what you're going to start with is you're going to start by just making your fractions. So I am showing 3/4 in pink, and I am showing 2/3 in blue. Now, in order for this method to work, you have to be showing your fractions in opposite directions. So for this first fraction, 3/4, I made my fraction vertically, and then for 2/3, I made my fraction horizontally. So all you do, once you have your two fractions, you're actually just going to layer them over each other. So right now I'm starting with 3/4, and then I'm taking 2/3 of that 3/4. So what you're looking for is you're looking for where do that 3/4 and the 2/3 overlap. So that's kind of all this purplish color in the center. So I can see that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 boxes that are slash. I have 6 boxes that are both covered by the 3/4 pink and the 2/3 blue. But what is my denominator now? Now my denominator is not in fourths, so fourths are these really long pieces, and it's not in thirds. When we combine this, we can see that we actually have new, smaller sections. So my denominator is not going to be 4 anymore. It's not going to be 3 anymore. So I'm just going to count, okay, how many sections did I create by overlapping that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I created 12 new sections. So 6 of those 12 were this purple color, and then there were 12 new sections altogether. So my answer to this problem would be 6/12. And if your students are far enough to simplify fractions, we could figure out that that is equivalent to 1/2.